Alright, welcome back to the Sci Fi Case project. This is part 18, is where we left off. So again, we're going to recreate some structure that's similar to this and attach it to this piece here, which is essentially just made from a simple cube. So I'm going to click on cube geometry here and start to scale that in, because it's crazy big, and move it out a little bit here. And we'll go ahead and scale that down quite a bit. And then if I just go to W and then hit the V key, I can just sort of start to snap it to this place or nearby. And so right about there, and kind of move it in place there. And so something close to that size. What we can do is bring it up to this piece here and really start to see, is this close to where we want it to be? In fact, let's snap it to that piece right there. Pull it out a little bit, and then we can start to scale this a little bit more and kind of adjust it. So first thing we want to do is scale it in from the sides. So the idea here is that this piece is going to be at the top, or no, this is going to be the bottom piece. It's going to actually be a little bit wider than these bars that are going across. Actually, I need these to be a little bit wider, not narrower. And then yeah, so something like that will probably be good. And in terms of the thickness, we could probably scale it down a little bit, something like that maybe. Or maybe actually bring it back closer to what we had. Okay, I think this is a good kind of starting point. Now what we need to do is add some edge loops. So I'm going to double click on edge loop tool. I have relative distance selected here. And so what I want to do is kind of frame this. I want some spacing on the top and the bottom. And I'm not, being super accurate. I could have, definitely generate exactly a certain measurement if I wanted to, but this is close enough. I just kind of want approximations of things. And then in the center here, I do want to be centered, so I'm going to add multiple edge loops set to 1, and that will center between these two edges this way and two edges this way. And so now I can go back to relative distance, close out, click on the arrow, and then, oh, I forgot one thing. I want a division line down the middle here, again, because we only need to work with half the mesh at that point, right? So let's add division this way with the multiple edge loop set to 1, go back to relative distance, close out, and then click on the arrow, and then now I can go to face mode and just double click on those, and then hit delete, and then double click on this and delete. So now we only have half the mesh to deal with here. So I'm going to select these 4 squares and then hold shift right click and go down to circularize components, my favorite thing. And then I'll hit R, and I'm going to scale this in first to get close to, approximate closeness to that one. I'm going to hit number 4 to kind of help myself out a little bit here. I don't want it to be crazy big. We need to be a little bit smaller, it looks like. Something like that. Because we are going to add an edge loop on the inside. So now I'm going to hit Control E, click on the blue cube, and then blue cube in the center here, and drag to the left a little bit. That'll create an inset, an edge loop essentially around the outside, which will help support it, basically, is what it comes down to. And then I'm going to hit Control E again, and this time grab the blue arrow, drag in a little bit, and then Control E again, and drag in until I snap to the edge here, essentially this edge here. So if I hold the V key and kind of snap to that line, it will end there, and then I just have to hit the delete key to get rid of that interior part. So if we move this up a little bit, you can kind of see now I got the same kind of hole, and if I mirror across, basically I got a perfect, perfect side, essentially. If I smooth this, if I hit number 3, you can see I got kind of like a rubbery kind of cube. So we are going to have to add some, supporting edge loops eventually. But what we want to do is connect this face right here to this face down here on this piece. And so that's something we're going to want to do eventually. I think first, though, we could select this face, hold shift, double click, and I can extrude out the front maybe and rotate a little bit. So I'm going to hit Control E, drag that out a little bit, and then I'm going to hit E for rotation and kind of rotate that to get that kind of same slant that we have for the front. And just trying to make sure you got that rotation just right, and I think that will do it. And you can see in here, if we isolate this object, we've got some faces that have just been added. So I just got to select these faces here that we're going to delete, so we have a clean geometry there again. And then at this point, I think we can go ahead and isolate W. Let's see. We hit W. It is centered. That's good. I think we can go ahead and mirror the geometry across. So because it is centered in the line here, so again, I go to Mesh, go to Mirror, go to the options, and this is Object, and it's Z instead of plus, which is the blue arrow, it'd be in the opposite of the blue arrow, which is minus. So switch this to minus and hit apply, and just like that, now we have that essentially that block cube on the end there. So if I hit number 3, you can kind of see, you know, the shape of this thing, what it would look like. At this point, I could do face mode, and I'll select these faces at the bottom, and I'm going to do a little extrusion down here. Hit Control E, just kind of bring it down a little bit, hit the blue cube, drag to the left, and create a little inset, kind of something like that. Oh, that is a little bent there, I noticed. Let me undo this for a sec. There we go. So I'm going to double click on this edge and hold the shift key and double click on this edge and hit R, and I'm going to try and scale that flat, and then I'm going to double click and hold the shift key and double click here and kind of scale those flat. It looks like, actually let me undo that. I think you can do it with the face. Let's try that with the face. If we grab the cube and scale, yeah, the whole face will scale flat. That's what I want to do. So now I got it, you know, flattened out by dragging from the X direction here. And so now I have these faces selected. Hit Control E, grab blue arrow, and then click on blue cube to left. Kind of create a little scaled in. And I kind of want to add an edge loop here. I think double click on edge loop. Make sure relative distance is selected, and I'll just add an edge loop like right there, and maybe one. Whoop, I'm gonna do that, and maybe one right there, just to kind of hold that edge at the bottom pretty good. Yeah. Let's hit number 3. Take a little look. See, it's got a nice rounded edge at the bottom. We're going to straighten that out with some edge loops down here, but first, the next thing we're going to do is connect this piece to this piece. So we've got about the correct size, I believe. So I'm going to move this into place, kind of move it down here and get it close to where it needs to be. Something like that. And I'm going to turn on the other layer to see and compare this guy. Here it is, and if I zero out this rotation, I can see it kind of lined up. And so, you know, this guy is pretty close to the same size as I got there. You know, I think it's pretty close. If I move it down even a little bit further and then up, something like that. I mean, that's really close right there. So in the end, this is where it could be. So I'll go ahead and turn off this layer, and then looking at this, the only problem is it's literally penetrating the end wall there, so we'd want to bring that out a little bit to make sure it's not, it can be touching the edge, we don't want it to be penetrating, since this whole thing is going to be levitating around. So oh, I noticed I didn't, I didn't make a slot for that. So actually, later on I'll make a slot for it to go into. I think I do like where it's located at. So I'm going to use this as a guide, and another tutorial I'll create a slot for it to kind of, you know, right now it's penetrating the geometry, but I'll just extrude this path and create a little spot for it later on. So I feel like that's pretty close. If we hit number 3 on it, I mean, it's close. It's not exact, but it's close. Let me move it off to the side temporarily, just a little bit, and then turn that back on. You can see that one, it's scaled in where it fits in there. So maybe what we'll do is this one will hit number 1 and go into scale mode and kind of just scale in a little bit to make sure that it fits in there. And then I'm gonna hit number 4 and see how far it is. So 5, so what we could do here is, we'll have to move it down a little bit. So we want it to be like right there, essentially. Do we got any wiggle room there? Let me see. We do have a little bit. So let me grab these top verts here. I don't want to select these verts here or these because it could start to, well, actually, I take that back. I was going to say it would start to change the shape, but you can see it won't change the shape of the circle. So it should be okay to just kind of bring it down a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of line it up to give me some spacing in there. So that looks pretty good now because it's in front of that and it gives us some room there. Okay, so now these two objects need to be merged together. This one, as I drag forward here, just kind of bring it up a little bit. The first thing it needs a division line down the center because we want to, you know, connect it to these two parts, and we want an edge loop on each side of here too. So let's do some edge loop action. So we'll double click on the Insert Edge Loop tool, check multiple edges, and set it to 1. This will allow me to create a center line here, and then on this object I'll add a center line here and a center line there. And so now you can kind of see the spacing of what we're talking about here, approximately where we want this to go. Now the thickness of this might have to change. Oops, let me undo that. I still have the edge loop selected, so let me go to object mode, and I'm going to select both these objects by holding shift key, and then I'm going to do the combine command, which is this little circle here, and that's under mesh, and then combine. You can also do mesh separate, and so now it's acting as if this is one whole mesh. I can still move things around, so if I do want to move the whole top piece, I can just basically, well, let me isolate this thing. It's a little easier to look at. So say I want to scale this whole top piece, I can just select all these faces, you know, all these faces here, and then hold the shift key and select that one and that one. So I've got all the faces there, or I could do this in invert mode too, but I can kind of squish it to flatten it a little bit. And so even though they're combined meshes, you can still interact with one without the other. I can even move the whole thing up, which is kind of what I want to do, because I want this to line up with this edge loop a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is go to edge loop, double click on, or actually not double click, but click on this part of the edge loop, and then hold the shift key and double click so I have just that line, and I'm going to pull it back a little bit. Give me some breathing room here. Something close. Now we can go to face mode, select this face, zoom in, hold the shift key, click on this face. We can delete those two, and then rotate and select that one, and delete those. So now we can start to bridge across here. So we can do that, or since they are so close, I could use the target weld tool, which I think is what I'm going to do here. So I'm just going to grab each of these verts and just snap to these points. This is a little easier. since it's such a small little area here. And now, just like that, we have one whole unique mesh. Now, if I hit number 3 on it, you know, we're getting a rubbery type N here, so we're going to want an edge loop at the base here for sure. Looks like I still have, yeah, I need relative distance here. So I want to add one there, and then when I turn this back on, what I want to do is have this kind of lined up where approximately, let me click out for a sec, where the other one is. So I'm going to close this out for a sec, turn on this layer, and you can see that the other one just went up a tiny bit higher. It's up to here. So what I'm going to do is select this one, go to Vertex Mode, drag across these verts, hit W, and kind of just line it up and get close to that. Then I want to add an edge loop right here, and this is where the circle will come out, the little piston circle. So I'm going to double click on this, set this to relative edge, and kind of drag across to about there. Let me undo that. Drag maybe about there. And then I'll add one in there. One in there, so it's a little more square, I think, now. So what I'm going to do is turn off this guy and this guy. Let me isolate this guy. So just like we did down here with this circle, we're going to do the same thing up here. So again, we could just delete half this entire mesh and mirror it across. So this time, what I'm going to do is just make sure, yeah, it looks like the pivot's centered there. So I'm going to go into face mode, and I will just delete half this mesh here. And now we can just focus on this little part. So I need to add an edge loop. I've got relative distance still. One here, and maybe one here. And I'm going to double click on this one again and just edge slide it down a little bit. Double click on this guy, edge slide down. So I want this to be a little more square. That looks pretty close. Now I need to set the multiple edges to 1. Click here, click here. Now this will give me the area to circularize. So I'll right click, go to face mode. And you guys have seen this before. Click out with the arrow, make sure. Otherwise you need to cancel out the insert edge loop tool. And I'll click on this face, hold the shift key, and select those 4, and then hold shift and right click and go down to circularize component. It's my favorite little option there. Now I can scale this up a little bit or down, and then hit Control E, click on blue cube and scale it in a little bit. So give a little inset, and then hit Control E, bring in just a tad. Then hit Control E, and this time drag this all the way over, and then hold the V key and kind of snap to that edge there. So now, and then just hit delete. Now we have it midway essentially. So if we hit number 3, you can see that's holding the form pretty good there up there. You know, you could definitely add some edge loops. You can see the bend down here. But let's go ahead and mirror across the geometry here. So I've got the Z positive, the one I currently have. So when I go to mesh mirror options, I want to make sure I'm in the Z negative, which it is, and hit apply. And then now this guy is all set. Hit number 3, you can see I got a complete mesh here. Let's bring everything back. So that's looking pretty good now. So the only thing is, I feel like this guy could definitely go down further maybe, or the top could go down further. So let me try something here. I'm gonna hit number 1, isolate this guy. So what I want to try and do here is select, got a lot of extra edge loops in here by the way. If we hit number 3 and click off, let's see if we have turn off. Yeah, there's quite a bit of pinching there. Let's see. I could eliminate some of these edges here. So I'm going to double click on this guy. So we're going to delete this one, but we're going to keep, we have to keep it up to here. So really, all I have to do, it's on both sides. I'm just gonna hold the shift key and delete, deselect that guy and deselect that guy. And then I'll hit Control Delete, get rid of that guy. And then I'm gonna get rid of the top one. Same way. So double click. And this one, I'm gonna shift click that, and then Control Delete, backspace. So that gives me down here, if I hit number 3, it's a little smoother now, not so crazy. You know, it's not as compact, which is nice. And then these guys, this N-gon here, I can fix just by connecting these two verts to an edge loop in here. I'm going to add an edge loop maybe across. Oh, that's right. So when I undid that, it basically broke it. So it created an N-gon. Let me undo. This is just faster if I do it this way. I'm undoing what I just did for a sec. There we go. Okay. I forgot to add the edge loop first. So I'm going to add an edge loop across this way. There we go. Perfect. Now, double click, shift click, and Control Delete. Double click, shift click. Again, by holding the shift key, it's like holding Control. It's to basically deselect. Now I can essentially bring these two to this triangle here. So I'm just going to Multicut Tool, click here, left click, right click, and then here left click, and then right click. So you can see here now, that's good. No more N-gon there. And then same here, left click, right click, and left click, and right click. It's always good to end things on a flat surface like that. Triangles, you're not going to see any distortion or anything. It's really nice to do that there. So yeah, that works really well. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to select all of these faces, or not faces, but verts. Go to Vertex Mode. I'm going to select all these verts, come in here, I'm going to hold the shift key, select all of these. So I'm not selecting the circle in the middle. And I'm going to select these, again, not near the circle, and then all of these. So again, I didn't select any of these circle ones, trying to avoid the circle. Then I'm going to hit W and kind of pull this down a little bit. So this guy gets a little squished right here, this vert, and this vert, and this vert. So what I can do is select those three, kind of just pull them up and even them out a little bit. Same on this side. Select these three verts and just kind of pull them up and even them out a little bit. And go back to object mode and hit number 3. What that did is that just brought us down closer to the base, which is essentially what I wanted to do here. So now if I turn the other one on, you can see the profiles are very close. They're a little off, but they're pretty close now. So the final thing I want to do with this guy is just add some supporting edge loops to basically not make it look so rounded. So I'm going to add, let me double click, make sure I got, yeah, relative distance. So I'll add an edge loop here, and that will kind of firm up that area. And then on this face, on the front, I'm going to add one along here, one here, and then one on the inside. If I bring one here, what's going to happen is it's going to cause an issue with the circle here. So I could do that, but then what I have to do is delete this part and let this go someplace else. So I'm going to undo that. It looks like, yeah, it wouldn't go across anyways completely because of the circle. So let's see how this looks with Smooth Mesh Preview applied. Hit number 3. And so now I'm just looking at it, and I like the smoothness of this. This looks good. Nice, like kind of beveled quality. And let's turn this back on. That looks good. So I think this is a good stopping point. So what we got here now, again, the pivot's not in the correct location. It's way up here. I'll kind of temporarily kind of put it close to where it would be. We need a piston to be in here. But the idea here now is that this would rotate up like so. And so I know that's not exactly the correct location, as you can see, but now it would rotate up, and it would have plenty of clearance and stuff here. So I think this is pretty good. We might have to bring it down just a tad. Looks like it's definitely connecting a little bit too close to this. So real easy fix. Just go to Vertex Mode, drag across all these verts, hit W, and kind of just pull that down a little bit further to give it a little more clearance. And so now, if I hit E for rotation, I have good clearance there. Especially when I have it smooth solid. Yeah. Alright, cool. So at this point, I don't really need this mesh anymore. I could delete this guy, or I can hide it, or keep it as a memento or something. I'll just shove it aside for right now. But at this point, we kind of have this set up. The next tutorial will create our cylinders for these two little joints, have a little shorter tutorial, and then start blocking in the main mechanism here. I might scale this down in between tutorials. The other thing I could do is scale, just to show you guys. Let me just isolate this one more time. I could bring this all these verts closer down from the top, so I could select these guys, hold it, let me undo that, hold shift, and drag across all of these guys, and this guy here, and this guy here, and then control drag over that. So just make sure there's no, see how these dots are selected. Gotta make sure another circle is selected there. But now I can essentially kind of pull this down a little bit further. I think this whole thing just needs to get squished down a little bit. It's a little bit too big. So I can do the same thing on this side, kind of drag across these guys. And again, not select the circle, and kind of pull in and tuck it in a little bit. I think that'll kind of help. And then the bottom, I can do the same thing. Select all these guys, control drag over the middle. I think I got all of them. Oh, see this guy here. I can still select. And let's see. Yeah, everything else is good. I'll kind of move this guy up a little bit. So I just did it right there. So that kind of gives me a little bit smaller unit, and then I would maybe bring it up a little bit, but that's pretty much it. All right. So until next time, see you soon.